again. I just wanted to give a little plug here for Toastmasters. I had a chance last night to visit the Toastmasters Club, which I had previously been involved with, and it just reminded me of the great opportunity that this presents. Now, I wanted to talk a little bit about why I would say that. There's an old saying that Jerry Seinfeld did a great humorous way of presenting. At one point in one of his stand-ups, he talked about how at a funeral, generally people would rather be in the casket than up giving the eulogy. Now, it's been known through, I don't know, probably different surveys, that the fear of public speaking usually comes in greater than the fear of dying for most people, which is pretty amazing, right? So it's it's probably near the top of the heap of fears that people have. And I don't know why that would be. It probably has something to do with the fear of being attacked or ridiculed or something like that. I don't know, but nevertheless, anytime we have the opportunity to take on a fear or to act in spite of a fear, which objectively and rationally is not going to harm us if we go forward with it, like public speaking in front of people who are receptive, it's not going to harm us. Nobody's going to shoot us, throw pie in our face or anything like that, at least not in those settings. Then it's groundless, right? It's baseless. Well, it's not groundless and baseless. I should take that back. There's obviously a reason why we're afraid, but we can still act in spite of it. So therefore, I would say that, approaching that greatest fear, that's number one. Number two would be gaining, and as a result, gaining confidence. That'd be number two. We all, every one of us can probably do with a little bit more confidence in our lives. And number three is learning a few basic skills on how to structure our speech and how to listen to what others are saying and understand. So that's important. Although I don't agree with everything that Toastmasters does in terms of the way they structure things, at least it is a system. So we get exposed to a system of clear communication. Now, to tell you why I got involved with it and why I think it's a great opportunity for others, I'll start with a little story, which I may have told before, but I'll tell it again anyway. I guess it's about 5 years ago now, I was wanting to start this kind of like a mastermind group and turn it into a thing called Coffee Chat. And at the beginning of it, I was always able to talk to one or two people at a restaurant booth or something like that. It wasn't an issue. But for some reason, if there was more people all looking at me, I'd get tongue-tied or flustered or something like that. Sure enough, the first couple of meetings that I did were just one or two people. In fact, the first one was just one. But then after a little while, a few of the people brought a few people. All of a sudden, there were about 8 people or something like that at the table. It was we had a booth which seated 4 people. We had to put another table on the end of the booth to extend it to double that. And I was sitting at one end, and I was to give a little presentation. And for some reason, I lost my notes, got a little bit scrambled within my papers. I couldn't find them, and I was completely frozen for words. Couldn't say anything. It was just absolutely physically debilitating, the fear of all those people looking at me. And it wasn't a whole huge group, right? It was like 8 people. And it was about that time that somebody, through somebody's encouragement, I joined a Toastmasters club. And I stuck with it for 4 years. I went through the whole program. And like I say, what I got out of Toastmasters was basically, in terms of coming from Toastmasters, well, I basically got 3 things out of it. I got an opportunity to face my fear on a weekly basis. That's important, because there's lots of programs that people can take. There's Dale Carnegie, the Christophers, and a few others, I think. There's, of course, all kinds of coaching and whatnot for public speaking, which will give you the strategies, give you some templates, give you a couple of opportunities to stand up in front of the room and say something, but they're not ongoing. In Toastmasters, you can join, you can stay in it for life if you want, and every week, if you want, or more often, if you go to different clubs, various clubs, which I did. At one time, I think I did about five speeches in 1 week, because I went to a bunch of different clubs. But you can, there's a ready-made audience, a small audience, willing to critique you, give you some feedback, and even if you're not giving a speech, you can be the chairman or the general evaluator or an evaluator, or you can conduct a business meeting or anything like that. Anytime you have an opportunity to stand, look people in the eye while you're talking, and keep talking according to what you wanted to say with a few brief notes. Anytime you can do that, it's like anything else. Whenever we start, say, a new job, it's uncomfortable, right? Whenever we start an exercise program, we're out of shape. Whenever we get involved with a relationship, it's a little uncomfortable, maybe at first, because we don't know, we don't have all of the paths. It's not natural for us. We're not accustomed to it. I find it's the same with public speaking, or facing a certain kind of a fear like that. At first, there's a lot of unknowns, and that's, of course, probably where the basis of the fear is too, right? A lot of it. But once we approach it, not just, I know a lot of people, they'll hold back and they'll give a speech every 6 months or something like that. I don't get it. Well, maybe because everybody's there for a different reason. But if you're there, if we're there to overcome or to face that fear and to make headway upon it, to greatly reduce it, the idea of doing stuff regularly. Remember when I got involved, heck, I jumped into everything. Right away, I took on a role as club secretary. I remember after about 5 meetings or something, I took on the chairman Toastmaster role, which is the one who basically runs the meeting. Didn't have a clue. So there was one guy there who had all the answers for everything, because he's been there forever. So I asked him if he could sit right up in front, sort of right next to the lectern. So every time I wouldn't know what I was doing, I just turned to him and say, "What do I do next?" You know, and I got through it. Maybe it's just the way I learn, but it's just jumping right in there and doing it, which makes a huge difference. And I wouldn't be able to do this. Might sound, this is a crude little video. It's rough. It's bouncing around. It's everything. But I can tell you something. I would not be doing this if it hadn't been for that week after week after week after week of facing that fear. I just see my very first videos like, I'd memorize everything. My first couple of videos, I'd memorize everything, and then I'd sit stark still in front of the computer and read what I memorized as best I could, and it came out just like a automatron or something like that. It was ridiculous. Not a smile or not an inflection, not a swear word in there. It was just ridiculous. But I wasn't being natural, right? That's one of the things about losing the fear. We become more natural. We become the way we are in our own little room, or our own little looking in the mirror in the morning or something like that, or singing in the shower. We become more natural. And of course, with a little bit of structure, we can flow through then too. And that's another thing I'll talk about. So consequently, with losing the fear, one of the things that happened too with me is I gained more confidence to be able to get up there, and little mistakes didn't matter anymore, because it was more like I was speaking to myself, or just speaking to one individual. I mean, that's one of the things that teach us in Toastmasters is don't bother talking to everybody. When you're talking, just talk to one individual first, or at each time. That's why the eye contact, moving around the room. Talk to this guy for a while. Talk to this lady for a while. Talk to somebody way in the back. Talk to the cameraman for a while, or whatever. So it's talking to one individual at a time, rather than trying to talk to everybody. So that confidence to just be able to say what you want with a little bit of structure. And what happens is you go completely off notes. Like, I'm not on notes right now, but I have a little bit of a structure, right? I have a little bit of a structure, which is a couple of points, right? Losing the fear, gaining confidence, having a little bit of structure. Those are the three kind of points I want to talk about. This becomes natural. You write a speech. I remember one time, a little bit of a story here, once again, as a result of losing the fear, gaining confidence, and having a little bit of structure. A friend of mine who was a life coach, he asked me if I'd present at one of his events. He was having kind of a speaker event. It was an evening. He had about 100 people there, and he had about 5 different speakers, people he knew, he wanted them to basically present a positive message. And of course, you know, he was a life coach. Hopefully some of the people would join his life coaching practice, which was perfectly fine with me. I'm a free enterpriser and all of that, and if I could help him out, I was going to, and it was an opportunity for me to speak. But he contacted me kind of last minute. I didn't have anything prepared. So, and of course, and I got there pretty much last minute too, and I was to give something like a 15 or 20 minute presentation. I don't remember what it was about now, but so anyways, I show up pretty much about 5 or 10 minutes before the thing was to get going, and there was a little huddle going on. There was my friend, the life coach, and about 5 of the speakers, and then me showing up last minute. And he was trying to prep them on what they were, you know, the sequence of who was going to speak when and how it was going to go, and is everybody ready, kind of thing, right? Because he wanted to make sure everything. He was the kind of guy who wanted to make sure everything was ready. He had his cameraman there and everything. And I show up, and he asked me, "Oh, I'm glad you're here. We were wondering if you're going to make it." He said, "Do you have your speech ready?" And I said, "Yeah, pretty much everything's ready, but I haven't written the speech yet." And there was another friend of mine who was in Toastmasters, who had one of these guys who he's about 6'5", and he has one of these thunderous laughs, and he'd laugh at anything he thought was funny at all, and he just started laughing like mad. And when he could finally compose himself, he points at me and he says, "Those are the best kind." So, and that's what I did. There was a library off to the side. I went in there, and I just basically jotted down my topic and 3 points. And then I didn't need any notes. I could just basically leave them off to the side, and all I had to remember was 3 things: main topic, of course, the overall topic, and the 3 points that I wanted to flesh out in the topic. And that was all. I was able to do that because of Toastmasters, of week after week after week of practicing. It's the same, once again, as learning a language, learning how to play an instrument. Take learning a language, for example. If you ever tried learning a new language and being uncomfortable with it at first, it seems like everything has to get translated, and you have to work off of memory almost at first, and it's clumsy, and it's looking through that dictionary, and it's stumbling for words. Well, it's like that at first, I found, with Toastmasters. For me, it was anyway. What was I going to say? Yeah, at first I would memorize everything from word to word, like right from, and I don't recommend this, but that's what I did. Nobody told me otherwise. I remember my first speech, I did it from one end to the other. I spent 3 weeks memorizing every word. I would memorize a sentence, and then I'd go on to the next sentence, memorize that, and then I'd put them together, and I'd say the whole thing, and I did that right from one end to the other. And I stood up there, one spot, and just blah, 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 it's like saying the Hail Mary, you know, like saying the litany or the rosary in full speed. And if I had missed a word, I'd have been screwed. But that's how I did it at first. And learning a language is sometimes a little bit like that. It's one approach to it anyways. If you're learning it studiously, right? If you just jump into it, if you were to be dropped into a different culture in the middle of China, let's say, and you had to work and you had to get along with people, in time you'd pick it up organically, just like a child picks up a language. But either way, if you get to use it over and over and over again, after a while it becomes natural. So when we speak our native tongue, we don't have to think about what we're going to say. Same with walking. We don't have to think about putting the next leg forward. We just do it. And it's the same with becoming confident. We just are confident. Losing fear, overcoming fear, we just act in spite of it. We don't ever completely lose it. We just act in spite of it. And we become more directed it that way. Same with learning an instrument, right? An instrument, at first it's, you know, noticing where the fingers are going and plucking and it's sounding weird and everything. And after a while it starts to flow, right? It's the same with learning anything else. And finally, I want to talk about the structure that Toastmasters teaches. Like I say, I don't agree with all of it. It tends to be a little bit archaic, perhaps because it was developed in the 20s or something like that. But nevertheless, a system helps us to realize the importance of maybe our system. So we can learn, you know, one time I was learning guitar, and the instructor said, at first when you don't know anything, just watch what the instructor's doing, do what they do. And when you get comfortable with it, eventually you'll make it your own. You become your own. And all that, it doesn't all go out the window, but you're no longer playing like the instructor, you're playing like you, right? And it's the same with learning a system. If you have no system at first, to adopt a system and then adapt a system, right? So that it's really basic to start out with Toastmasters. It's basically you want an opening. There's an old saying, you know, tell them what you're going to tell them, and tell them what you told them. So you basically have an opening, you have a body, and you have a conclusion. And within that body, you have several points, right? Just getting here to work here, so just finish off. So you have several points, and so it just helps you to structure. And it's also easier for people to understand when you say, I'm going to talk about dogs today, and I'm going to talk about how the importance of picking the right dog, and the importance of feeding that dog right, and the importance of training that dog. People get an idea of what you're going to talk about. Then you talk about, you know, choosing the dog and what kind of food to feed it, and then how to train it so it's a good dog. Then you wrap up at the end and you say, well, and that's why I want to stress the importance of finding the right dog, the importance of feeding it right, and the importance of training it. When you learn those couple little tricks, eventually you can elaborate. You can do a 2-minute speech, you can do an hour-long speech, you can add points, you can subtract points. But the idea of having a certain structure also, I find, helps with the confidence and the losing of fear and all that sort of thing. So once again, I'm going to sign off for now. To say that I really enjoy Toastmasters, and I think it's really important for people to join if they want to lose or get by certain fears, to gain confidence and to gain some sort of structure in communication. My name is Steve. Bye-bye for now. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.